Hey, everybody, and welcome to Key Conversations for Leaders. I'm your host, John Ryan, and today we have a very special guest, Paul Robinson. Paul is the founder of Ensunet Technology Group, a San Diego-based company specializing in M&A post-merger integration and IT enterprise architecture solutions. A company which is featured on Inc. magazine's 2008 and 2019 list of the 5,000 fastest-growing private companies in America. To date, Ensunet has supported more than $11 billion in pre- and post-merger IT planning, due diligence, and integration, including staffing projects throughout the United States and the world. And today we're fortunate to have him here on the show. Welcome to the show, Paul. Great to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dr. John. Thank you for
Thank you.
having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks. Now full disclosure to everybody listening and watching, Paul and I have worked together in different capacities for the last 5 years now. But I wanted to see if you could just kind of run back a little bit. I know from us talking previously that there was a bit of a leap of faith in your career that really set you down this path. Can you talk a little bit about that origin story?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question. My entire career started with and has continued to encompass leaps of faith. I actually started 20 years ago now. Gosh, the time has gone by so quickly. I started here in San Diego doing what's called help desk work. And, progressively in our industry, you work your way up and, try to get, more levels of responsibility, bigger titles. And when I originally got started, I had two choices. I could go the short-term contract route and aggressively go after more responsibility and build the resume, or I could go the safe, secure, stable route with more established type companies. And I was hungry at that time, which is very, very important in terms of career development. And so I chose to take the leap of faith, and I did short-term contracts that had a lot of responsibility, but there wasn't certainty necessarily with the organizations. But it got me into technology. I was immersed in all different types of things, big, uh, complex type projects, and that was sort of my start. I didn't know a whole lot about IT, but I wanted to jump straight in and learn as much as I can and continue to grow. So it's been a progressive uh, set of leaps of faith, and each year they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger.
Fantastic. How did you decide to get involved with M&A as a specific, industry?
That's a high quality question. I think the decision was made for me. This takes us back about 4 or 5 years, and at the time we were a small business, about 5 or 6 people, and we were working a contract uh, with a client. And 12 months into that contract and that program being in flight, that client was acquired by a much larger enterprise, and so we had the opportunity to help integrate that company that was just acquired. And so it was actually by accident that we were pushed into M&A. I wish I could tell you I sat home and drew out and sketched out this amazing entrepreneurial plan on a napkin in a kitchen, right? But it didn't quite work out that way. It was an opportunity that I was presented with by accident, and it ended up being a very, very interesting, fun, and from a business perspective, profitable niche.
And that's kind of how life is quite often. We have a plan and then things come a different way. It's not like life is designed out like the Marvel Universe series where phase one, two, three, and four, you take opportunity and you go with it when that happens. So 5 or 6 years ago, is that's when you began the M&A work and was Ensonet already in existence, or is that a more recent development from an organizational perspective?
Much more recent development. We have what will be this year in 2021, a 13-year operating history. And so for the first half of the company's existence, we did what was called traditional IT consulting, IT architecture. And very simply, that means a company has deferred maintenance, older, antiquated systems, and they want to upgrade, and they need an advisor, a consultant, to come in and help plan and strategize and implement that work. And so that was the type and the complexion of the work that we were involved in prior to M&A. And so yes, the M&A story for us is a recent development, recent being 5 years and running now.
And as a company, how do you describe the services that you offer as Ensonet?
Great question. We very simply describe our services, and what we offer is helping corporate and private equity portfolios realize investment synergies, right? So company A acquires company B, and they're trying to, very simply make 1 + 1 = 10. IT is the underpinning, is the foundation for, the modern organization. And so what we do is we come in and strategize, the integration plans, a lot of different elements to help empower the business and, help them reach that objective that they're trying to get to for M&A.
So with companies that are going to go through a merger, when does that planning process for what happens after the actual merger, when does that really need to begin?
The planning process, ideally, for a merger should begin many, many, many months to even looking at targets to acquire. You need to understand your internal capabilities. It's almost like a self-assessment, and this is one of the things we recommend. Who on the team has gone through an integration event? What were the lessons learned? How can we bring those lessons learned and apply them to what we're trying to do here? And quite often, 9 out of 10 acquirers, they start thinking about these things after the transaction has happened. Frankly, I get the call all the time, after the toothpaste has been squeezed out of the tube, and we're in this reactionary mode trying to put together some type of integration plan. So ideally, it's happening many, many months before, and you're going through a self-assessment, a readiness assessment, a capabilities assessment, to understand how ready you are, how prepared you are, because it's a very, very fast-paced event. And if you're trying to realize synergies, trying to make 1 + 1 = 10 at the speed of business today, and if you're not planning that out months in advance, uh, it's going to be what's called a value drain. You're going to lose a lot of money.
Have the mergers and what you've seen, not only from your own experience, but in talking to other professionals in the industry, have they changed significantly in the last 5 to 10 years, or has mergers always been pretty consistent across the board?
Great question. The core fundamentals of M&A transactions are still the same. If we look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years, all of the focus was primarily on the financial underwriting. We buy this and it's going to take us to this next level. In today's environment, 2021, you have a lot of new factors. Technology is here and it's ever changing. You have a new generation of workforce that is demanding different things, right? And so if you're an acquirer and you're only myopically focused on just the financials, you're missing, 2/3 of the picture. You have to be thinking about, how is this acquisition going to, position us as a good corporate citizen out in the social media space? How are we going to be looked at as an organization? And this is important because you're on this serial path of acquisitions. And if the companies that you're acquiring aren't, you know, uh, looked at and desired as really good places to work that are making good social impact, right? That's going to have a direct impact on the talent that you're able to bring in. And so, short answer to the question is, yeah, financial, all of that still is there, but you have to be looking at some of these other elements as well.
So you have to, of course, the financials are a part of that, but you have to look ecologically at the technology, the people, the environment, the positioning in the marketplace, and all these other factors. If I can ask on the technology side, imagine quite often two companies come together that have not had a coordinated, IT plan. Can they always come together? Is it always possible to integrate technologies and get the systems working together properly? Or is there a limit
Sure.
of, or is that a
Uh,
cost benefit thing too?
it, Absolutely. You can always integrate systems together. The real question becomes is how long is it going to take you to do that? How expensive will it be to maintain both environments, right? You're going to have staff that has expertise and depth with both systems, right? How long is it going to take to integrate those systems? So the short answer is yes, but it doesn't necessarily make financial sense, to maintain disparate systems, for the long haul. And so if you're again going back to due diligence planning and really understanding the rationale behind the acquisition, what are we trying to achieve? If you have a very clear in state or future state in mind, um, you can make better decisions. But yeah, it's possible to integrate, multiple systems. It's just going to be very, very costly and not very, beneficial down the road.
those IT integration decisions, are those also things that has to happen before the merger actually occurs, or is this something you just want to wait till afterwards and then get started?
Oh, we always wait to the very end. Ideally, IT, the senior leadership in the organization, the acquirer, the company that's going to be doing the acquiring, if the senior IT leadership has a very tight and a tight relationship with the leadership of the company, that is, there's trust with the IT group and the leadership of the business, then they can have a strategic seat at the table and understand what the rationale for the inorganic M&A growth plans are, and then how IT as a partner to the business can really empower that. And so if there's trust inside the organization and with the IT departments, they can really understand what's happening, and then position leadership to be ahead of the curve if they actually do start executing on acquiring companies.
I know another offering that you do in addition to the PMI is, of course, cybersecurity and IT staffing. But on the cybersecurity, what are some of the things that companies, organizations really should be thinking about in relation to keeping up to all the demands of and the ever-changing nature of cybersecurity, I'm sure.
One of the biggest holes inside of any organization is the lack of information being distributed to the workforce, right? So very simple things about not opening attachments that you don't recognize from people you don't recognize, just small things like that. And so if you as the parent organization or even the target organization you're looking at doesn't have what's called an enterprise risk management plan, cybersecurity plan, that is educating the workforce, is telling them about what the latest threats are, what are the latest subversive tactics to try to get information. Really, very, really, really simple things. Uh, we always think about this elaborate cybersecurity hack bringing down an organization. Quite often, it's just something very, very innocuous. Someone, a line worker, just opening something or doing something that they shouldn't have done, and had they been educated properly and trained through regular communications from the IT group to the organization, you can avoid probably 50, 60% of the events. And so if you're an acquirer and we're doing a readiness assessment, we have our due diligence checklist and playbooks, and we're beginning the due diligence process with one of the targets, we want to understand how far along the journey and how mature that target's cybersecurity plan is. What types of things have they been doing, the IT groups, the IT group in question, or whoever is responsible for IT, to educate the workforce, so they're all singing from the same sheet with respect to the threats that are out there. So
So if I hear that correctly, the cybersecurity risks are, of course, technological and also people, and it sounds like the majority of the risks are people focused versus like coding and software and things like that.
this is not to say, yes, this is not to say that if you are not doing routine maintenance on the IT systems and infrastructure, and just leaving gaping holes, that the bad actors out there, whether they be nation states or just people looking to monetize, are not going to find them. I'm not suggesting that necessarily. Yet overwhelming, it's just average people, average people in the workforce making just inadvertent mistakes because no one told them not to do this. And once you let them in, the bad actors in, they can spread through the organization and can put uh, different parts of technology in the organization and have sat there for years. You may be acquiring a company who was infiltrated 2 or 3 years ago, and that intellectual property, the data, the source code, or the secret sauce may actually be sitting out somewhere that you don't even know about, right? And so this is why we always educate just around um, you know just putting the information out there to the workforce and educating them regularly, so it's not a shock when they see something and open it and they get surprised, right? It's just really, really simple things like that. It doesn't have to be a complex discussion.
I worked with a large corporation a little over 20 years ago, and I was in an area where the guy had opened up the "Love You" virus attachment, if you remember that, and
Yes, I do.
it went out to 65,000 people around the world. it was an insane
Talk
situation.
about
So
love you.
the simplest things, yeah, he had to get legal involved and all that kind of stuff. So, and I imagine those things still exist, but they're also getting more and more tricky and more advanced on the human side. So you got to really handle both. Make sure
Yeah.
the software, the coding, and the systems are all set up, but also make sure you're educating the people and keeping it top of mind as being diligent in the process too.
Yes. The one of the other things too is, part of our due diligence, we'll ask the teams, has there been a breach that they know about, right? And how forthcoming are they being about that, right? Because that speaks to a lot of things, the in terms of the cybersecurity plan and how they're addressing that. So I mean, there's those are just a few things of probably 300 or 400 that we're looking at in that specific area around enterprise risk, cybersecurity.
With all the different endeavors that you've done in terms of post-merger integration, IT staffing, and cybersecurity, and building the company up to where it is today, what have been some of the biggest challenges that you faced as the leader of Ensunet?
Some of the biggest challenges out there really surround um, competition, and it comes in a form that most people don't really think about. In the context of M&A, one of the biggest competitors is this idea that we internally we can take on all the work ourselves, and you may be already working 60, 70 hours a week, and all of a sudden now the organization says we're going to start acquiring, and the idea is do more with less, right? And so one of the largest challenges that I've had to face as a leader is just this putting out the information that we're a strategic partner to you. We're not trying to replace, we're not trying to come in and change a lot of things, but to position us as a strategic ally, along the journey. And that's, as a leader, trying to get the information out there to enable organizations has been one of the biggest challenges as a leader. The other big thing, and this is no secret, is we're probably negative unemployment for IT qualified 18 players, and so we are always continually recruiting for people to help in all different areas of what we offer in the M&A services world. So as a leader, I'm always not only communicating with prospective and existing clients, but evangelizing and hunting for talent, because we always need high qualified people to deliver our services. That's the key piece. I mean, you can market and sell something, but if you're not able to deliver that service effectively and to the customer satisfaction, things can go bad. And so that's probably one of the two big challenges, that and talent.
So the negative unemployment rate for technology, can you talk more about what that is? It sounds like negative inflation in some countries as well.
Yes, what we're talking about here is the idea of, if you have a skilled tech IT practitioner, whether they be a senior consultant, senior cyber, or somewhere in between, they're in very, very high demand. And then when you add that additional layer of someone being a very, very good communicator and having the right pedigree to be customer client facing, and they're really good at relationships, that's just this trifecta of goodness. And so people like that, they're just not very readily available. And so when I say negative unemployment for IT, it's really hard to find good people, coupled with the idea that we all know that in today's environment where a lot of people are working virtually, IT jobs, technology jobs at all levels are very portable, meaning you don't necessarily need to live in the city where you're employed. And so you can get a job anywhere, you can work for any company. And so the real question becomes, why should I work with this organization? And this is what we're talking about.
Well, that ties into the employer value proposition and marketing your company to different prospective employees out there as well. So it's so relevant. What do you see are some of the bigger challenges that leaders are not only facing today, but may face over the next 5, 10 years?
It comes back to attracting the right talent to deliver whatever it is that you're offering in the market, product or service. You have a new generation of workforce that's coming in who cares about different things. They care about more than just salary. They want to live in an environment where there's ample opportunity for growth. There's things that they can do socially. There are people who are interested in starting and growing families. They want to work for an organization that's making a good social impact. So there's what's happening inside the company, and then what's happening outside. There's a lot of identity wrapped around that. And so, you know, all of us leaders, need to be cognizant of that and designing out, our companies such that we can empower that next generation of workforce to, have solid careers, but then also make a good social impact out there. And so it becomes a win-win for everyone.
I know that your dad, Arnie Robinson, was a legend in the sports world. He took home the gold in the 1976 Montreal Olympics, jumping, I believe, 27 feet 4 inches and 4 and 3/4 inches on the long jump. Do I have that right?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. What are some of the lessons that you learned from him along the way, and how they've impacted you?
I'll 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 share a story with you. When I asked my father, how did you actually win the gold medal? And I think I was around 29, 30. I got to that age where, as a child, I actually began to listen to, sort of the important lessons that my parents were talking about. And I asked my father one day, how did you win the gold medal? And he simply said to me, I was an average athlete until I began training with world class athletes. And when I did that, I had to rise to that next level. They pushed me harder. I had to work harder. And then I became world class. And so the important lesson there for me was, to surround myself with people who are, performing at that world class level in business, right? Because the expectations are higher, they push you, right? And you become a better, athlete or business leader, whatever it is that you're trying to do as a result of that. So, I've heard it said the law of averages, you're the average of the closest five people you spend the most time with. And this is a key lesson that I got from my father, surround yourself with high performing people.
Fantastic. That sounds like a really important and impactful conversation. Obviously, at Key Conversations, we feel that conversations are the key. In addition to that, are there any other conversations you can think of, either from your dad or someone else, that's had a profound impact on you, either personally or professionally?
One of the other words of wisdom and pieces of advice I got is from another mentor of mine. His name is David Finkel. He owns Maui Mastermind. It's an organization that coaches business owners on how to implement the right systems and controls to scale their organization. And he told a story in terms of trying to position yourself in the marketplace. And he used the metaphor of a large stadium in the parking lot. And so if you can imagine driving into the stadium parking lot and you're seeing all these cars, thousands and thousands of cars, and you're driving, trying to find your parking space, right? Quite often what we do in business, a lot of business owners, and where they make a mistake is they will try to drive into the parking space of a car where a car is already sitting there, right? The world doesn't need another toothbrush, right? What's the differentiation? What's the specialization that's going to be there? And so what he described is, as you're driving down, the different areas in the parking lot, you need to find an empty spot, right? And so the lesson that I took away from that is, there's 100,000 IT companies out there, but there are only a few in the world that do IT M&A as a niche, and there's only a smaller group that can actually perform that very, very well, and that's our parking space.
I love that. Excellent. Great words of wisdom. Thank you so much for sharing. And Paul, thank you so much for being here on Key Conversations. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you and find out more about Ensunet's offerings?
It's a pleasure to be here. I sincerely appreciate the invite. And if anybody wants to reach me, they can email me directly, probinson@ensunet.com. That's PROBINSON at Ensunet, ENSUNET.com.
Excellent. And I'll post all the social media links in the show notes as well. Again, Paul, thanks so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And to all you listening and watching, thanks so much for being here. Until next time, develop yourself, empower others, and lead by example.